Shabbat Shalom. I'm Rabbi Robert Barr, and I'm pleased that you're joining me and one another for this streaming Shabbat service. This is a chance for us to pause, to catch our breath, to think about where we've been and where we're going. So put away the pencil and the paper, put away the notebook and the keys, set aside the shovel and hammer, rest. For this interval, no buying, no selling, no laboring, no straining, not living in the past, not planning for the future. This is a time for celebration, for joy, for mirth. We are here alive to rejoice in another Sabbath, another opportunity to be together, grateful for our family and our friends. With no distraction, we touch and are touched, the great gift of the Sabbath. Again, I'm Rabbi Robert Barr of Congregation Beth Adam. That's our bricks and mortar congregation here in Loveland, Ohio. That's part of a greater Cincinnati, if you don't know the region, and our Jewish community. That's our online initiative we began about 15 years ago. We jumped online. We recognized there was value using the internet to connect with members of Beth Adam who moved to different cities, people who had visited Beth Adam maybe for a bar mitzvah or a bat mitzvah and liked what they heard and still wanted to remain informed and connected. It allowed us to reach people who read about us in newspaper. During the pandemic, it became even more important. And now we continue to engage and use the internet to connect with people like you on services this evening. But we recognize that the technology is simply that. It's a different form of a microphone. It's more than the microphone that's important. It's the values that we talk about here at Congregation Beth Adam. For over 40 years, we have been a congregation that gives voice to a bold, dynamic Judaism, a Judaism that recognizes we're not our ancestors. We don't need to mimic their words or parrot their behaviors. We need to create a Judaism that is reflective of who we are, of what we believe, and of what we know. And it's not just doing that in our adult education. It's literally recreating the services, writing new liturgy that speaks to these ideas, infusing our liturgy with our understanding of the world and universe in which we live. And you're engaged in that right now with me and with each other during this service. So I'm delighted you're here. Being online affords us some opportunities. You can communicate. You can chat with one another. If you're on bethadam.org, you're probably doing that. You might be on one of our Facebook pages, our Beth Adam Facebook page or our Jewish Community Facebook page. If you are, wish us a Shabbat Shalom. Let us know where you are participating from. It's always nice to know that. It also means you don't have to watch the service at 7 o'clock when it streams live. We recognize that 7 o'clock may not be convenient for you, or you may be living in a different time zone. We're here to serve you when you wish to engage. We're not telling you when to be here. We're just saying, we're here. Join us whenever you can. Also means I can record a conversation with somebody earlier and bring it to you during our service. So I'm delighted you're here. I'm delighted that we're sharing this Shabbat together. So we continue our service with the lighting of the Shabbat candles. On this Shabbat, we create our moment in time. We pause to reflect upon our yesterdays and tomorrows, to renew our ties with family and friends, to restore our energies, to refresh our spirits. As the sun descends and the shadows lengthen, the distraction of the day gives way to the stillness of night. It's time now for us to see not with our eyes, but with our hearts and minds. As the day gives way to evening, it's time for us to welcome the Shabbat. The candles stand before us, waiting to be lit. We recall our ancestors as we too seek to dispel the darkness and banish the cold, to bring glowing softness, warmth, and safety into our homes. May the dancing flames of these candles kindle warmth within our hearts, wisdom in our minds, passion in our souls. Baruch ha'or ba'olam, blessed is the light within the world. Baruch ha'or ba'adam, blessed is the light within each person. Baruch ha'or b'Shabbat, blessed is the Sabbath. In time, disturbances will pass. Difficulties will dissolve. In time, aggravations will be forgotten. Obstacles will be overcome. In time, we will find solutions even to our most pressing problems. Mountains move and even disappear. Clouds part, revealing an ever-present sun. In time, moments of desperation will give way to an inner calm, and through others, we will find comfort for our fears. In time, may we find ways to accept life's unending turbulence completely and move gently forward in time. I'm pleased to share with you a conversation that I had recently with a member of Congregation Beth Adam, the chair of our Social Justice, Social Action Committee, Mike Goldman. Our conversation will let you know about some of the things that we're doing here at the congregation. I'm really delighted that Michael Goldman, Mike, is joining us this evening for this streaming Shabbat service. Mike is the chair of our Social Justice and Social Action Committee and very involved in separation of church and state. So Mike, welcome. I'm really glad that you're willing to take the time to talk to us.
Delighted to be here.
So can you talk a little bit about what drew you to the Social Justice Committee of Congregation Beth Adam? You've been involved in it for quite a while. So what drew you there and why is it important for you?
Well, first, I will say I've been a member of Beth Adam. I believe this is my 20th year.
Wow.
Which does not, stack up compared to some, but that's a fairly long time. And I've been the chair of the Social Action, Social Justice Committee since its founding, and I was part of the group that you put together among the congregation to go through that rigorous process to choose a project for social justice. So you asked why. I've spent a lot of my adult life, or a lot of time in my adult life, involved in public policy discussions, pressing for change. And I've done it mostly in the political realm. Because of Beth Adam's mission, vision, and values, I saw no reason that Beth Adam itself as an organization couldn't, or that it should be involved in pressing for change. I mean, social justice, Robert, is, I think you would totally agree, and I probably learned some of it from you, it's about affecting policy. It's systemic change. Social action is very important, but it's not the same as affecting policy. And affecting policy to make people's lives better. It's tikkun olam.
Right.
And if I can quote a rabbi, Rabbi Abraham Heschel famously said, this is really one of my favorite quotes, not just as a member of Beth Adam, but way before, in a democracy, some are guilty, all are responsible. So we all have a job to do in a democracy.
I mean, I think that's a great and an important quote for Heschel. And when we started the Social Justice Committee, we tried to narrow it down to what we were doing. We realized we couldn't do everything. There's so many issues in the world. And we distilled it after, was it probably close to a year process, down to two, what we call big its, the two things that we're working on. One is the issue of climate change, which clearly is an existential crisis. How are we managing our planet? And the other is separation of church and state. And while you oversee both teams working, you're really involved a lot with separation of church and state. That's sort of one of your passions. Right. And I was wondering what drew you into separation of church and state, and why do you think that that's such an important one to be involved with?
Well, I don't want to get into politics in terms of party politics.
Right.
But I think that what I will say is that the environment of and the nature of the public discussions about things that are really intimately tied to religion, I saw as changing pretty dramatically from my childhood through my early adult life to today. And I think I'd come to realize that separation, if I can just abbreviate the whole term to just
Sure.
separation, is profoundly important to protecting all our freedoms as Americans. I mean, I think it really started to dawn on me. And not only the freedom to practice or not practice one's chosen faith, but religion through a kind of, I don't know, an unchecked osmosis can alter it. It does alter. It doesn't just possibly. It will alter public policy, and we see this in matters of reproductive rights,
Right.
education. In terms of, I mean, our founders would be shocked and horrified about the voucher system going to religious schools. And Thomas not to, I don't want to get on a lecture here, but Jefferson and Madison and Adams exchange a lot of letters about some of the other founding fathers who were not as well known wanting to get tax money for their churches, their own churches in like Virginia and Maryland. And so our founders were fighting some of these battles way, way back when. But we've seen these changes that religion has had the effect on, education, reproductive rights, gender identity, and who you're allowed to love.
Right.
I mean, that's why I decided that church state was an incredibly important thing.
And so one of the things that the church state team did was they said, and you were intimately involved in it. The team did a lot of research and developed a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation that, as a function of COVID, frankly, has allowed the team to give this presentation to groups literally around the country. And it's I think about it, you can correct me because you're much more. It's sort of three sections. There's the whole section about the history of separation of church and state, and a really deep dive into understanding how our country came to this place where separation of church and state was so important and why that was. The middle section explains explains the laws.
Well, it explains the law and how the High Court, the Supreme Court, for pretty much 200 plus years, supported and ultimately made that foundational principle even stronger.
Right. And then the third is the erosion of it. So the presentation, actually, people can go to the bethadam.org website and they'll find it under our education if you go to social justice. So you've now presented probably dozens of times, it feels like. I mean, you've done it really, and you've done it with other members of the team. What's it like to be talking to people around the country? And it's just to be clear, it's an adult education program. Usually it's under the umbrella of OLLI, which is Osher Lifelong Learning Institute, typically tied to a university for retired folks or older folks to take classes. So you've been doing it occasionally in person, but mostly online. What's it like? What's your experience been giving those talks? How do people respond? What have you enjoyed about it? What have you disliked about it?
I don't think I can point to anything I dislike about it, except when there are technical issues. With
Zoom, there's technical issues. I always thought all this technology works perfectly.
Really, to be fair, it happens very rarely.
Oh, good.
But when it does, and you're 2,000 miles away, and of course, you could be next door if you're using Zoom, it's still the same technology. It can be kind of talk about a panic attack.
Yeah, it's very frustrating.
But I can't say there's anything I don't like about. I've really enjoyed it, and I would say the one thing that I would take away from it, everything you said about the program that we do is correct, and we've presented to thousands of people now. And what I've learned is that on the one hand, how little folks actually know and really understand about the underlying fundamental principle of separation of church and state, and that how taking it for granted has become very dangerous. And I mean, I would say that's been one thing I would point to, and Now, it's like you said, it's important to remember this is a pretty small sample size,
Mhm.
and it's also self-selecting.
Right. Sure.
But I would say these are, while the skews older for sure, these are pretty much everyday Americans. I
Right.
mean, it's very, as far as gender, I would say it's evenly split. Uh, Racially, it's diverse, but that's just my being able to see on Zoom, so that's
Sure.
not statistical. But these are folks that believe strongly in the wall of separation. And the more they learn from our program about how it developed, from what our founders were studying and how it was written into our founding documents, the more they learn, the more strongly they want to protect it.
Really.
And then they ask us, what are we supposed to do to protect
Right.
it? And that gets dicey because we don't know that much about what to do either. We're just
Right.
trying to educate people.
So really, it's to heighten awareness. What is there? Are there certain sort of themes that you get? So people are that as you presented, people sort of are excited, curious by, upset by. Are there any themes that you've come across, or any questions that seem to be repeated more often, other than the one about what do we do next? Because we'll talk about that a little bit at the end. But
Okay. Well, I don't. Of course, there are always a few folks that think that our presentation goes too far.
Really,
And it's not often, but there's some people that think that they do believe in this doctrine of there's a religious basis for our Constitution.
really, wow.
Um, and not that they believe we should have a national religion. We have not come across people in our program that say that.
Okay.
But they do believe that, like prayer in school is okay, don't make such a big deal out of it, things like that.
Hmm.
Um, I'm always I've always waited for the person to stand up and, well, they don't literally have to stand up on Zoom, but raise their hand and say, you guys are presenting just one side.
Right.
And my response would be very simple. There is only one side.
Right. So you're
Separation
trying.
of church and state is in our documents. If you read the founders' letters and everything else, it's quite clear.
Mhm.
So I'm not really answering your question, I guess, but I would say the thing that folks generally point to is the thing that I think I learned also. So maybe I'm self-selecting what I'm hearing, but they're learning through the program that the connection between that robust wall of separation and our freedoms has become more clear to them.
Okay.
And they didn't understand how it's actually religion and the infusing of religion into public policy starts to erode reproductive rights. That there is actually a connection between religion and taking away abortion rights and contraceptive rights, gender identity rights. The people don't always. I didn't either. I didn't always fully get that there's a religious element to this.
So you really connected the program really connects dots for people where they've not been connected before, and how the courts then historically have really worked to keep that wall of separation. And the final part is really about how that wall is being eroded, that we're living in, and it's been going on for some time now. It's where there have been those who want that to take the wall down, who want to destroy it brick by brick. And in the process, we're seeing the implications of that. We're seeing how when religion gets back into the public sphere, people lose certain rights. And you've pointed out whether it's the Colorado case, I think that's one of the cases,
right,
or issues around funding of religious institutions, which is going
well,
on.
or a Jewish couple being denied the right to adopt,
Right.
Because the agency, which was publicly funded, public tax dollars, but they were Christian fundamentalists, and they didn't want a Jewish family raising the child.
Right. So you've brought a lot of that together. And I know one of the challenges has been that given that it's been going on, that the committee's been functioning for several years, there are unfortunately more cases. So it's always the committee and the
Yeah,
team is always looking at which cases they should talk about, what are seminal cases, which are the really big ones that change, and which are the other ones that are going on. I know the prayer case of the coach praying in the middle of the field becomes a case. Pemberton, we talked about that. These are all
right.
important things that the committee has talked about, and heighten people's awareness about how people's rights can be eroded and limited, and also how in school settings, certainly where kids can be made to feel marginalized and othered, that if they don't pray, they don't get to play, that the kids feel like they're obligated to because of the way the coach was behaving, and it's there. So there's a liberty issues of personal liberties, but also of certainly when we're dealing with kids, making sure kids are protected because they are very vulnerable, particularly in the school setting when there's an authority figure. And you've
Correct.
explored that as well.
Right.
So I think it's important to say that the committee, the team that developed this, not attorneys, but did a lot of research relying on lots of materials that are out there. And I think that's important for people to know too. If you're not, if you're learning about this for the first time, the team has used work from Americans United from Separation of Church and State, which is an organization I'm involved in. I'm on the Faith Advisory Council. Freedom from Religion Foundation has done that. I think work with other materials drawn from ACLU, probably looking
and we've thanks to Zoom again. There's nothing I want to thank about the pandemic for, believe me, but Zoom which was around before the pandemic, by the way, it just exploded after. But because of the ability to use the technology, we've had some, nationally renowned speakers not only just come to speak to us, but also to help educate us through their own research.
Right.
Which we have, as they say, great writers don't just create, they steal.
Right.
So we have very, very liberally lifted the great material from people that are true scholars.
Right.
And sometimes they are lawyers too. They're not just scholars, but they're lawyers and scholars.
Right. So Andrew Seidel he was from the Freedom from Religion Foundation, and now he's at Americans United. I can't remember Andrew's book, but he spoke at the congregation on Sunday morning. The name of the book escapes me, but he's an attorney. He's written a couple now about this. Catherine Stewart wrote The Power Worshippers, upon which Rob Reiner's new movie, God and Country, was based in large part. Catherine's a researcher. She's spoken to the congregation, and these people have come and talked at adult education, but also met with the team as they were developing the program. So
that was super. I can't emphasize how important that was.
And I have to say, from my perspective, it was incredibly interesting to have time with people who really steeped in all this, willing to give their time. And I think we're passing it on. I think that's one of the great things about the team. It took the information that they gleaned from those folks and passed it on. And I think once people get a heightened awareness, they go, so what do we do now? That which is the hardest question to answer. If you're interested in doing something, one is get involved with these organizations. Pick one that you find meaningful to you, whether it's Americans United or Freedom From or ACLU. There are multiple organizations that are doing this. Support them. They need both emotional support, and they certainly need financial support. And get involved with those organizations. They each have their own particular bent and issue. But I would encourage people to get involved with them. And I think it was interesting. It came up at a Sunday morning. I think this came up. Another thing is if you see a violation, report it to one of these organizations so they can do something or investigate it, because that's how they do their work. Is they can't be everywhere. We become their legs.
Well, what you're saying is so true. And you and I talked before this interview about, is there anything that has shocked me through this process of being involved in developing the program and just learning more about separation of church and state. And of course, there's a few things that have shocked me. But one that I just want to dovetail to, or piggyback, I guess would be a better phrase in this case, is how thoroughly calculated the plan of the religious fundamentalists has been over 50 years. I mean, they're playing the long game, uh, and they want a complete eradication of the wall separating church and government. And they're so well funded. I mean, when I dug, Catherine Stewart's book, of course, was a great resource. She's done all the years of research digging in to the the numbers, and it's amazing how she got people to talk to her on record.
Right.
I mean, they're just, I guess they feel completely emboldened because they know who she is.
Right.
And they reveal all this information, and it is frightening how much money that they have, and they've got legions of volunteers. So you're right; it's report violations, get involved, give money if you're able. Those are all really important, and just educate yourself. Be aware.
Absolutely. That's really, it's important. I'm so proud of what the team has done as a group of people, as volunteers, to get out there, and it's having an impact. I think heightening people's awareness is incredibly important. Reminding people of this fundamental principle and getting them to be concerned about it again. I think a lot of us, myself included, there was a point, and I think we thought, the wall of separation is strong; it can never be eradicated, and then there has been a systematic, long game plan to eradicate it. And it's been incredibly effective. And in part because people were willing to stand to keep on fighting for it. And sometimes it's a small fight and sometimes it's a big fight, but we got to be in the game or we're going to lose.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't know how close we are to ending this
we got
time.
like 2 more minutes. We got to both.
But I don't know. This might be a good thing because sometimes I will end our talk with this great quote, and there's a reason I choose. There's tons of great Supreme Court quotes, but Sandra Day O'Connor, to me, number one, she was appointed by Reagan, who people think of as the great conservative of the last 80 years. And was very much in herself a conservative person,
right?
In her actual personal life, and she was a religious person. But in a very important 2005 case from Kentucky across the river, it was a different county, right? But it was a 10 Commandments case about putting the 10 Commandments in a public building. And that got to the Supreme Court, and the court said, no, you can't. It doesn't belong in a public building. It was a 5-4 decision. She was the swing vote that said, no, you can't do it. And she ended her opinion with this quote, and I will, I'm just going to read it because it's so important to me. Those who would renegotiate the boundaries between church and state must therefore answer a difficult question. Why would we trade a system that has served us so well for one that has served others so poorly?
Wow. Well, that's an incredible quote. And clearly it speaks to the fact that separation of church and state historically wasn't a liberal conservative. It was divided. No. It was about people who understood the importance, and Justice O'Connor certainly understood that. And I think that's an incredible quote to end on. It has served our country well. We should not give it up. So I appreciate you spending some time with us this evening. For those of you who are joining us tonight, maybe you want to learn more about it, come to the Beth Adam website. You can learn more about what we're doing. Mike, thanks for taking the time, and thank you for being so involved in this and shepherding the committee for so long. I know we only signed you up for a little bit, and we keep on dragging you out. You're doing a great job. So
no, I wouldn't keep doing it. I really enjoy the work, Robert.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate Mike taking the time to share with me the work that the Social Justice Social Action Committee is doing, and particularly diving deeply into the separation of church and state team. He's been actively engaged in that, and it is an essential and important issue that we all need to address. Separation of church and state is a fundamental American principle that has allowed our country to flourish. It has been incredibly important. And regrettably, as Mike observed, as we talked about, there are those who seek to erode that wall. I hope you invest some time, energy, learn more about the separation of church and state. Come to Beth Adam's website, come to the education, go to social justice. You can watch the presentation, an earlier version of that. You can get involved, whether through Beth Adam or one of the organizations we mentioned. We all need to participate. It is so important, and it is fundamental to the success of our nation. We continue our service with the sharing of juice or wine. We celebrate the fruit of the vine and the bounty of nature as we lift the cup. For we are part of nature, which gave us birth and continues to sustain us. Even as we depend upon nature, so do we influence its course. Through the search for understanding, we have gained the knowledge to shape our world. Guided by the best of human wisdom and the compassion of our spirit, we accept the responsibility which rests upon us. May the taste of the wine or juice upon our lips stir within us a reverence for nature and a respect for human endeavor. Ruchim hachayim ba'olam, blessed is the life within the world. Ruchim hachayim ba'adam, blessed is the life within each person. And we say, l'chaim, to life. Our service is drawing to a close, and I encourage you to go to bethadam.org. That's our website. And there you'll find our calendar of upcoming events. So that's the best place to find what's going on, whether it's about our Friday night services, whether it's a streaming service like this, or the hybrid service where there are people in the library with me and then we Zoom and it's interactive, or coming to an adult education class and you can participate in that via Zoom. You need a link, so you need to contact the congregational office if you don't have that. Passover is quickly coming up, and if you need Haggadahs, again, contact our congregational office. I'm so glad we could share this Shabbat together. I'm so glad that we could spend some time thinking, learning, reflecting. And we conclude with the words we end with each week. May we know blessings those who are near. May we know blessings those who are far. May the Sabbath bring its goodness to everyone soon, wherever they are. May we know blessings through the day, and may we know blessings through the night. May health be for our children and for all people, and all things soon be right. May we know blessings in our comings. May we know blessings when we depart. May we live each day with peace and wisdom in each heart. Ken Yehi, let it be. Shabbat Shalom.